And we'll unpack those as we go. But before we get started, I'll explain a little bit about myself. So I'm a successful online businesswoman. I run a virtual law firm, and in less than 2 years, I've taken an idea and turned it into a business that makes well over 6 figures a year. And it now hires not only me, but my husband and a lawyer and a bookkeeper. I'm also an author. I have the chapter in Back Yourself, of course, which launches today, and I've had the privilege of contributing to with 27 other amazing women. But I've also authored another book back in 2018 called The Tracksuit Economy, which is a book about working from home. And that was published well over 2 years before COVID made working from home the new normal. So it was really, and that book, The Tracksuit Economy, was really the precursor to my business and my chapter in Back Yourself. And the reason for that is that when I was pregnant with my son, I had a reaction to an anti-nausea medication given to me at 13 weeks pregnant. It was given to me for morning sickness, but it actually caused a sudden cardiac arrest. Now, both my son and I are really lucky to have survived that. And when he was born, it created a really fundamental shift in the way that I viewed life and still do, which it's actually 9 years ago it happened. So for me, life is really too short not to follow your passions and spend time with those you love. But the traditional 9-to-5 construct was not giving that to me. When I had my son, you know, we had childcare issues. My boss in Sydney, where we were living at the time, was quite flexible, but childcare wasn't, and all those constraints around that. So it's not just the corporate system, it's childcare, it's everything else that supports that system. And it just doesn't deliver flexibility to families. So I sort of went on a journey of remote work and ultimately opening my own business where I have a remote team. And all of my team actually are working parents managing those sort of things. So with my own business, and it'll be 2 years in March, I've built up from scratch and created something that I've called the supercharge method. And I've developed that to apply to my own business, but I've also been applying it to clients' businesses. I've run a couple of programs this year, more generally, and then specifically for lawyers. And I'm in the process of applying it to various online productized services as well. So there are 9 steps in my supercharge method, and all of which I outline in my chapter in Back Yourself. Today, we're going to talk about, because we've only got sort of 45 minutes for the workshop, we're actually going to talk about the 3 outcomes you get from applying those methods rather than the 9 steps. But certainly have a read of my chapter and Back Yourself, and you'll get a feel for more of those steps. And those 3 outcomes are more time, more money, and more freedom. So let's get started and turn to time. Can we create, and here's a bit of a brain puzzler for you, can we create more hours or use the hours we have better? So obviously we can't add to the 24 hours we have in the day, and we have time we need to sleep, for leisure, for family, and for ourselves, for self-care. But what we can certainly do is give ourselves back some of the hours we use in other ways now, and use those hours that we do have better. So it's a bit of a twofold approach. And, you know, the first thing I want to touch on for these sort of quick wins I was talking about today is, what do I mean by give ourselves back hours? And And the first thing I want to chat about here, there are two things. It's going to be outsourcing and automation. And the first one I want to talk about is outsourcing. We can delegate and outsource tasks. And by tasks, I mean both in your business and your personal life. But how can I do that, Emma? I hear you're asking. Well, I've got a few tricks I'm sharing with you today over here. And this is a bit of a graphic. And for those of you who like to think with mind maps, it's a great way to do it, some lists. So I've got some headings here and we'll go through them. So you look at here, first of all, I want you to think about what you love, what lights you up, what you love doing. Then I want you to think about, okay, what's okay? What am I good at? What am I okay at doing? Those things you don't mind doing, you don't love them, but you don't hate them. And then you want to think about what you hate doing. Do you hate doing the ironing? Do you hate doing your bookkeeping? Or what takes you ages to do? So there might be something you're not skilled at. Like for me, creating these slides when I probably should have outsourced that to someone else. And they would have done probably a much better job, much quicker than me tinkering on Canva last night. But, you know, and that could have freed me up to do some other paid work I've got here. So you sort of got to have those lists, what you think about. Now, that column here, what you love, it's probably going to be what's below what you will keep doing. That you might, you love it, it lights you up, you get pleasure from it, you're good at it, it's quick, it's profitable. So all those things, what you might keep doing. Now that middle column, what are you good at? What are you okay at? You might look at some of those things and think, yes, some of them go into the, I'm going to keep doing that list. Some of them go into, well, someone else can probably do that because my time is better spent elsewhere. And you can also look at with that, what will you change about what you're doing? So you don't necessarily have to outsource something to a person. You can outsource something by automating a process. And we'll chat more about that in a minute. But just to think that, it just means you don't have to do it personally. It doesn't mean another person has to do it. It means there might be an easier way of doing it. And then you look at what you hate. And that's probably the really easy stuff to turf out, get a cleaner in once a month, or hire Rebecca to be your bookkeeper, or Vanessa, get one of her bookkeepers in, or do something like that if you really struggle with zero every month. So that's a really powerful list. And I think if you commit to just doing one change a week or one change a month, that's really powerful, and that will free up more time, and it really creates a momentum of its own. And that's what I wanted to chat to you about today in terms of workshops and quick wins. I think it's a bit like when you start diets, there's always, it's always really advisable to have some quick wins on the scale to keep momentum. And I really think changes and outsourcing and automation and freeing up time in your life is a lot like that. So it could be, for example, by outsourcing, it could mean you hire a VA, or you hire a copywriter, or someone that will help in your business. It doesn't need to be an employee. It can be, or someone that helps in your home as well. Or it could be you buy something like a Thermomix, or a slow cooker, which just makes life easier. So all these things, it doesn't have to fit into a certain matrix, but freeing up that time is really powerful. And the other thing you can do to free up time is look at what your commitments are and start saying no to things. There might be a little athletics committee you volunteered on for the last 3 years, or a soccer club, and you just can't spare that time. So this year, I purposely didn't put my hand up to be age manager of my son's little athletics team. I could still go down and watch him, but has just freed up my Wednesday afternoons that little bit more, so I don't necessarily have to be there for as long, but I can still see what's going on. So then we look at after we outsource, and as I said, outsourcing doesn't have to be to a person. It can actually be automation or a different way of doing things. So I've got 3 examples here, all of things that I've done in my business. The first one is, and this is actually my favorite automation tip, and it's really easy. I've got Acuity calendar, but there's things like Calendly, there's all other different types as well. And I've actually got it set up on my contact page on my website. So if people want to book a call with me, they can just go to my website and it's booked in. Now you have to actually be really mindful about booking out time. So time blocking, time you need to keep free, because if you leave it in your calendar, it will get booked. So but that also has that flow-on effect of me working out when I will speak to people with calls. And for me, it's actually during school hours or certain times. So my calendar may look a little bit different during school holidays. And that's really great. And look, I'm really fortunate that most of my clients are mums like me, and they also like to speak to me during school hours. But honestly, I think this saves me 2 or 3 hours a week from that email or phone calls about booking time. Does this time suit you? Does that time suit you? You know, someone who knows what their calendar looks like goes on, compares my calendar and picks a time that suits them. I get their phone number, their email. You know, that's all just automated, and it shows up in my calendar. And when it's time for me to call them, I call them. And that's been an amazing thing. And I think it actually meant when I started my business, I didn't need an administrative assistant for the first while, because I had done that and some other things. So the next tip is to get your tech to communicate. So I have something called Zapier, which is a middle management software, and it makes sure, you know, when there's an invoice in Xero, that Dubsado, which is my customer relationship manager, it can create a project, or it adds, you know, gets ActiveCampaign and Dubsado to talk to one another as well. Or when someone books in my calendar, they also, I capture their email so I can communicate with them. So that's been really a really good thing to do. It means that certain software programs can talk to each other. I don't have to do things manually, and that works really well. And on the next tip, which is setting up a nurture sequence, it's an email nurture sequence I'm talking about. So I have ActiveCampaign, but you might have MailChimp, and you might have, say, a downloadable free thing that people sign up to in exchange for their email list, and then they get a nurture sequence of emails. So, and I think it's really powerful to do that. And the reason for that as well is that they become, you know, you own your email list. In May this year, I was kicked off Facebook for 5 days because I went to put an ad up and they wanted to verify I was the right person spending my own money. Which, yes, it's great, they were verifying that, but it also meant for 5 days I didn't have access to my business account. So I've put some safety factors in place since then. Since then, my husband has joined the business. He's now also an admin on our Facebook account, but I've been extra careful about, you know, making sure I have those records, those mailing lists are imported, and we've got that nurture sequence. And the beautiful thing with something like ActiveCampaign or MailChimp is that you can set those up once they're set up, and you might need to pay a professional to set them up, because they can probably set something up in an hour that might take you a day and a half. They're there then for good. So that's been, getting time back, and that saves me time every week. And it also makes my clients feel nurtured. So we'll go now to more money. And you kind of think, well, how am I going to get more money, especially if you're a service-based business like me, or even product-based? It's the way that you actually look at how you work. So especially in service-based businesses, a lot of us work one-to-one. So we have a client, we do a customized job for that client, or we speak to them, we have coaching with them one-on-one. But there are some ways that you can get caught up in that. And it's limited, because if you work one-to-one, then your hours and income are capped due to the hours in the day or the hours that you can devote to work. And after all, you can only work so many hours a day and care for your family. And really, who wants to work all the time? We need that downtime for self-care, for our families, for work-life balance, to create that work-life balance. And what I've been trying to implement, and what the Supercharged method has been really good at getting me to focus on, is working on one-to-many. And there's two ways to do that. So we have productized services, which are, say, online products that you create, that you maybe market with videos, some consults, but also some done with you or done for do it yourself with clients. So you've got different levels of services and products. And also something like a group program. Now, if you think about the Osmumpreneur group, they've got Accelerate, and they've also got the Osmumpreneur conference as well. So it's really interesting to sit and think, and even with a product-based business, I think it's worthwhile thinking about what you can change with your systems and processes to really get that scalable business. And when we're talking about scalable businesses, getting your pricing, your scoping, what you do, your niche, that's all around this. Well, what do I do? Do I deliver to individuals, or do I deliver to a number of people at a time? So can someone go onto my website and buy a product or a productized service? And 10 people could do that at once, and they might book in consults with you, but you don't have to spend 10 hours with each of them. And that can be really powerful. And if you think about how many women, certainly this year we were all online, but last year I was in Melbourne at the Osmum conference, and there were just hundreds of us there. And they had all bought tickets or coming to the awards. So that's a really great example of one-to-many, a conference or a retreat like that. So then we really head over here to freedom. And this is something that is really personal to each of us. For me, it's being a business owner, living in a coastal location. But for you, it might be the freedom to travel while you work. You might want to take your family traveling in a caravan around Australia, or when it's not COVID, traveling around the world. Or it could be something else. So the freedom to work only school hours, or and I think I remember back to Leonie Dawson's presentation during the Osmum conference, freedom to work 10 hours a week. So it's very fair to say that freedom is subjective. But one common thing is, the question of whether your business can run without you and your personal input. Whether you have automated it or whether you have a team, then you're off to a pretty good start, because it's all about things being scalable. So a month or two back, I read a really great book, and it's called Built to Sell by John Warrillow. And you don't have to be wanting to sell your business or be planning to sell your business to read it. It's actually, in some ways, a misservice to him, I think, with the title, because there are some real lessons in there around building a business that can operate without you. And that can mean that you're not needed every day there. And they're on this slide here. So they're looking at things like systems. So do you have a repeatable, do you have systems in your business? So when a client comes in, do they follow the same path? So if you've got an online product business, they might follow the same path. Or you look at Netflix, for example. They come on, if they want to join, they subscribe, and then they can fill in profiles, and then they become a client, and everyone follows the same path. And that becomes repeatable. Now, you might have, if you were a service business, so I know Rachel was talking about Presta Physiotherapy before, might have a really repeatable routine. So a client comes in for physio, they get assessed, and then they have a program, and her staff of 12 are trained to do that. And Rachel, being on maternity leave, doesn't necessarily have to be involved in that. But she is there sort of with the culture and the management of the business, but not seeing every single client that walks through the door. And that goes into a trained team. Now, you don't necessarily need a team. Some of us, like myself, have online businesses where certain things are automated. So my online shop doesn't need any team involvement once products are listed and they're up there. But I do need a team for the legal services side of things. And there's only so much I can do. And we've had to look at roles. So in my team, we have a paralegal, a lawyer. Myself, I'm also a lawyer. So there are 2 lawyers and a bookkeeper. And it's all training them and having true systems and standardized things. So you want everyone to feel unique, but it could be that every client that comes in, we enter them into our customer relationship management system. They get a quote. We let them know where their matter is at and timelines. There's a system for doing the work, for reviewing the work, getting the work out, talking to the clients. So there is that system there. And around that, clients can book in without having to speak to anyone. They can book in on the calendar. Certainly they can call us and speak to us, and that's fine. But actually, most of my clients prefer to book in online. And then you look at what's scalable. So for me, in my business, of what's scalable, it's either got to be one of 2 things. I can have more productized services, which I have sort of coming periodically online, but I can also then have a legal team. Now, there's a capacity that my people team are going to get to. So that would mean bringing on more people and juggling that work and the inflow of work and clients with that team. And then training them in the way that we do things and our team culture. And the great thing is eventually, I'd like to step back and do more business development rather than hands-on legal. So that will mean getting more lawyers involved and having really strong systems and processes they use to make sure that every client gets the same kind of experience. And look, you don't have to have, when you say scale, you don't have to take your 6-figure business to 7 figures. You might find that by doing that, yes, you do need a team of 20 people. But then those 20 people are harder to manage, and it's going to cost you. You might be getting more revenue, but are you getting as much profit? So it's really looking at profit and what is freedom for you in your life. And that will depend on all sorts of things, like what your mortgage is, what your set expenses are. and that kind of thing. So I think it's really worthwhile stepping back and looking at your systems and your products. Do you have a niche? And in the book, and the reason I really liked this book, it's actually a parable. It's written about an advertising executive called Alex. In it, he had an advertising agency that was doing all sorts of stuff. So they had all these team members, but no one was really good at one thing. And he got to the point where he met this mentor who helped him build this business with systems, a repeatable system, a trained team, and that was scalable. And they did that by niching. So they niched down to logos. They created logos for people. And this meant that because they were doing one thing, the team became really focused and trained in that. They could then systematize it. They had a sales team, they had an artistic team, and they had an accounts team. So they looked at really standardizing that. And if you're doing all sorts of different things, it's very hard to standardize that. That's certainly why I have niched into my area. So I help women with online businesses and remote or virtual teams. And at my last role before I started the Remote Expert, I was more broadly a commercial lawyer and doing a lot of leasing work. Now, I might still do some leasing work if some clients come in, but that's not what I advertise as my niche. And certainly over the last 2 years, things have grown in that my niche has, I'm getting more and more ideal clients for my niche. And that's great because my team is becoming really expert, and myself, in servicing those niches. And a lot of those clients have the same needs. So our real kind of niche that we're getting a lot of work in is online courses and online memberships and helping people set them up. So as part of that, we now know the types of platforms people use to run their courses, and there's one or two such as Kajabi, which are really popular. We know how to help them put their terms and conditions that we create on that platform. So we make things really easy for them. And the reason we're able to do that is because we've been able to have a niche, and now we've got systems to price in that niche, to develop productized services, to know our scope, what we're going to be doing for people in that niche, and to make it repeatable. So now my paralegal, my lawyer, they all know what I mean when I give them instructions, say this client needs this. It makes it easy from quoting through to doing the work, through to delivering the work, but also making sure that the client experience is amazing and people get exactly what they need from us. And that's all been possible because we've looked at narrowing that niche. Now, if you do 10 things instead of 2 or 3 really good, really well, I should say, then that makes that a lot harder to do. And because of that, I've got a couple of products coming out. So we've got Supercharge for online courses coming out later this week, and Supercharge for online memberships coming out probably next week. And they've been possible because we have looked at that niche. We've set systems around that niche, and we know the real needs and offer solutions to people with online programs. And that's been a really powerful thing to do. It's also a thing I'm really passionate about, helping people with online businesses, because I truly believe that the online aspect is where the freedom is. My freedom is quite subjective, but it means different things to each of us. And here is me, my husband Ed, my little boy Oscar, who's almost as tall as me now. He's not quite 9. Our cat Violet, our sausage dog Barnaby, and our poodle Lulu. Now, we left Sydney 7 years ago this month, and we moved to the far north coast of New South Wales, which is where I'd grown up. We've got some family here, but it also became really apparent to us that housing prices in Sydney were just not necessarily out of our reach, but it would have meant living in an apartment way out of the CBD, commuting, long hours in daycare for Oscar. Daycare was hugely expensive while we were there. And we just didn't want that for our life because we would have tied ourselves to a huge mortgage. So for us, freedom meant moving. And, after we moved, I took a job at a local firm, which half my commute, but it wasn't any sort of freedom. And that journey sort of taken me to remote working, to actually seeing that as a precursor, and I had a lot of freedom in that job for an employee as a partner in a law firm, but it just wasn't as much freedom as being in charge of my own business and my own life. And for me, I have fibromyalgia as well, a health condition, which means I have to really pace myself. And being an employee and working with corporate clients as well, I would try and work school hours, and I'm really efficient at that usually. But then you would have a corporate client that would send you stuff at 4:30 they wanted by 5:30. And at that time, I was bathing my son, getting dinner ready, actually pretty exhausted and achy from the day. So for me, that freedom was to start on my own. And it was a scary jump. And I got to the point 2 years ago where I was just really burnt out in my kind of corporate remote job. And I said to my husband, I just can't do it anymore. So I left and I started the Remote Expert, and also started the Ignite program with Women's Business School shortly after that, or around the time I started the business. And at that time, it looked a bit different. I thought it was about remote work templates. But what I quickly came to realize was I wasn't going to change companies with remote working. COVID's done that for me. But really the people I was passionate about helping, they probably just, they needed to leave being corporate employees and start their own businesses. And they were the people I was passionate about helping with work-life balance. So it's become that female entrepreneur who has an online business like me, as a home-based business, or they work from a co-sharing space. And that's become my freedom. And certainly I think over the past 2 years, my husband's watched me do that. He kept his job when we left Sydney, and they said, you can work from our Byron Bay office. And that moved to a Lismore office, not quite as nice as Byron, for those of you who know the area. And over the 2 years that I'd started mine, his business was becoming quite stressful. And and when I started the Remote Expert, we were very reliant on his income. And it was very lucky that then, in August this year, came up for long service leave, and we said, well, why doesn't he come and work with me? He's been studying a law degree, so he's got those skills developing. And by then, this business had been making enough for him to take that leap. So we've sort of both had a turn of doing that. And that's made a big difference to my freedom for the first, I suppose, 8 years of Oscar's life. I was the parent who made the lunches, did the school pickups, did the daycare pickups. Ed was very hands-on dad, but had those corporate hours. And with both of us, with corporate hours, something had to give. It's been a really great change over the last few months, that all of a sudden, school bus pickups and things, Ed can do that. He can make lunch, do things with Oscar, which has freed me up with business development because we have a growing team here. So I'm, very much more a shared primary parent now, rather than, I suppose, the parent who was just doing those things. And I willingly did that. I think I wouldn't have had it any other way when Oscar was little, but I think as he's getting older, he'll be 9 next year, having that extra time with dad is also really important for him. And the other thing, when maybe 2 months after I started the Remote Expert, Oscar was diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia. So for me, I look at that and I know now that being an employee would have been very difficult, even with a flexible remote job. And I think, this year with NTIS and various treatments, I think Ed has noticed that too. So we feel very fortunate that we've created this freedom. And for us, freedom isn't making $1 million a year. Freedom is being comfortable, having a 4-bedroom house in a coastal area that, if we plopped into Sydney, it would be 3 or 4 times worth what it's worth here. But, we have that lifestyle on the far north coast of New South Wales, and that's been really fortunate for us. So we're getting to the end of this, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen and start taking some questions.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was amazing.
Thank you.
I love that you talk about freedom. I think it's so important when, so many of us start our businesses to create the lifestyle that we're dreaming of and to create the freedom that we're looking for. However, it's so easy to get caught up in, working hard to try and in an effort to get your business going. So I love some of the strategies that you've talked about today in helping to streamline those things so that you can actually create the life that you want, that gives you that freedom and that flexibility and that time with your family.
It is hard. And I think too, sometimes, we do a lot of online courses, and I've been doing a program this year which is about scaling your business to a 7-figure business. But I had a really great moment last month where I participated in a webinar. I think the week after, one of my friends doing the program also did, and she makes 3 times, her business makes 3 times more than the Remote Expert, but she also has 3 times as many staff. So she has that team, and then that's revenue. So I think it's really important to make that distinction and what it looks like for you and what that freedom is, and what I suppose success is, and looking at ways things can be easier. So it might not be getting 3 times as many staff. It might be getting some products or some productized services alongside other ways of working.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the beauties of being an entrepreneur is that you can create whatever business you want. If you want to be a massive business, bringing in a 7-figure income, then go for it. But if you're happy with a business that brings in enough to pay you a wage and then a bit more as profit, then you can do that as well. And I love that we have the freedom and choice to create whatever kind of business we want and whatever works for us. And I know people who've had big businesses, big offices, lots of staff, and then have gone, no, actually, it's not what I want. I thought that I wanted that, but now that I've got that, I actually want what I used to have, where it was more manageable. And we do have that flexibility as entrepreneurs. But you're right, it's all about really defining clearly what that looks like for us.
And it's been really interesting during COVID. Certainly in the legal industry, remote working is sort of like, oh, that won't work. Clients want to see us in our office. And so many people have been forced to work the way I set up this firm, and it's working quite well. And they're looking at models, hybrid models, and cutting back their office leases. And it's just been really interesting watching the rest of the world catch up with the way that some of us have been working for quite a while.
I think so too. I think COVID has really shattered a lot of illusions that people had about what work is and how work has to look. This old idea that we had to work 9 to 5, we had to sit in an office where the boss could see us working. That's such an old-fashioned idea, but so many people were still like, that was the world that they were living in. And COVID's just gone, actually, no, you can work from home. You can work from anywhere. You don't have to even live near the office to be able to work there. You can run a national business like Katie and I do from regional Queensland. I live in Airlie Beach, which has a population of about 8,000. Katie lives in Mission Beach, which is even smaller. And yet we've got clients all over Australia and we're running a national business. These ideas that you have to live in the capital city and you have to have a big office in the middle of town in the CBD, like it's not true anymore. And I think people are waking up to that.
Oh, absolutely. It's been interesting, and it really brings these sort of more time, money, and freedom, because I think, people thought, oh, remote work's like slacking off, or working from home is slacking, but actually you've got to be really strict with boundaries and time management. And I think as someone who has a home-based business, I've sort of covered that off, but COVID really, especially with homeschooling on top this year, that really put that extra element into it, and it made me really conscious to think, well, hang on, I don't have to. And I must admit, because I did these slides last night for this presentation, and the reason I was going to do them on the weekend, and then I actually thought to myself this week, and I'm like, no, I need a weekend with no work at all. So that's sort of why I possibly wasn't as prepared as I usually would be yesterday, but I've been really conscious this year to keep those boundaries.
I think boundaries are so important. And I think that's why a lot of people who weren't used to working from home suddenly were all expected to work from home, and then having to deal with putting boundaries in place, or like not having boundaries in place and then ending up working just all the time because you're at home all day, every day. And I think that's an important part of freedom, is understanding, like, when do you want to work and when do you not want to work, and how are you going to create the boundaries around your time so that work time's work time and not work time is not work time. And that's been a huge part of our journey as well. In the first 2 years, we just used to work constantly. We'd work all weekend, we'd work late at night. It was just always about work. And we had to realize that you can't do that. And actually, it's actually worse for your business, because what happens when you're working so much is you start resenting the business, and that negative energy is picked up on by your clients. So to love your business, you actually have to have time away from it as well, and really have that sense of balance, and that sense of self-care, I think, is important as well.
That's right. And it doesn't have to be you as well. So you might have someone that helps you answer some messages online at night or on the weekend. Or you can have an autoresponder saying, look, I usually answer messages during business hours. It doesn't need to be a person. And I think that's important. And as long as clients, if I got that as a client of a business, I would, okay, yeah, that's fair enough. And I wouldn't necessarily be expecting a business owner to answer me immediately. The next day would be fine, or business hours would be fine. So I think a lot of these expectations we put on ourselves as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, it's the fear that comes into it. It's something that I seem to be talking about more and more lately. But, as entrepreneurs, we really want to get things right. We want to do incredible, exceptional customer service, which is excellent. We do need to strive for great customer service, but we also need to balance that with, if someone emails you at 10 o'clock at night, they're probably not really expecting you to answer at 10:05. It's okay if you leave it till the next morning, and allowing yourself to let that go and then reply later, and having those boundaries around when you do and don't check email and work, and really looking after yourself, and having systems in place for that. Like you're saying, trusting someone else to be answering emails, or automation.
Yeah, and I think that's important to free up that sort of that low-hanging fruit that time, because then you can have the space to look in and see, well, what else can we do? What could we niche to? Like I was sort of talking towards the end, what can we niche to really systematize? But while you've got sort of 10 things going on and messages, and you're up till midnight, you don't really have that mental space to look at that and really drill down into the business and what works, what doesn't work, analyze the data. So I think that's quite a good start to really get that momentum to just go even that level deeper.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important to really take a step back and look at everything that you're doing in a holistic kind of way and go, what am I doing? What do I want to be doing? Where can I change things? And I love that matrix that you had about, what do you love? What do you hate? What's kind of meh? And how can you change things? What can you outsource? What can you stop doing altogether? I think looking at your business in that through that sort of lens can really make a difference in.
Absolutely, and not just your business either, your tasks. So look at it for a week of all the tasks you do in your business and at home and in your social life. It could be an obligation to a club or something that you've been involved with that it's probably time to let go because your kids are older, or you don't necessarily have to feel obligated, or there might be another way to offer support that's not so time draining.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to things like that, learning how to say no to things is so freeing, because when you say yes to everything, you're saying no to something else. And if that's taking away time from you or from your family or from your business, then that's not what you want as well. And so getting clear about what your priorities are and what your values are and where you want to be spending your time is important. But then the next step is being able to say no to things when you need to.
And it's funny because this year my theme for the year was it's not a yes unless it's a hell yes. And it was all meant to be about, last year as the first year with the business, I went and said yes to all these speaking events and I was traveling around everywhere. And then I was going to be really picky. It was either going to be the audience is full of my ideal clients or it's paid. And then COVID hit. So it was kind of like, well, I'm not going anywhere. But I actually got asked to do a lot of virtual things. And even this week, I had today and I have our panel on Thursday. And I'm also had already committed to it and a sort of a seminar on Friday I'm doing. But then I was asked last week for 2 more people to speak, be on panels and speak. And I just went, no. But it's kind of that kind of thing, just, that felt really good saying no to those things, because I tend to, that's been something that I've had to really work on and then work out strategies for that. Well, no, I can't, but have you thought about this person and that person? And that kind of thing is really good.
Yeah, I think it's important to be strategic when we're offered opportunities, because sometimes it's like, wow, well, it's an opportunity. I need to take it because I might not get this opportunity again. But actually, like you said, it's, well, what is the return on investment going to be from being part of this opportunity? Is this audience that they have, is that where my ideal client is? Because sometimes it's not. And if you're clear on who your ideal client is, then you can tell whether it's going to be worth your time or not.
Oh, absolutely. And last year I flew to an event in Sydney. I paid for my flights and my accommodation and, didn't get any clients out of that event. And then I did that event virtually this year because it was virtually. I don't think I would have gone to Sydney. And again, no clients. So next year it's definitely a no for that one. And I think being crystal clear on ideal client, and it took quite a while, to get crystal clear. And I remember seeing ideal client worksheets initially, what music do they listen to, what shows? And I'm like, oh, I don't care. I just want people to, who are going to pay me money. But it is actually really important because you really need to speak to them and understand their problems and their wants. So that's, as part of my Supercharge program, that is something I work on with people, their ideal client, because it's really the key to unlocking everything else we've talked about today, knowing who you serve and
and who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with, because sometimes there's people you don't want to work with.
Oh, there are. And now I work with so many of the people I love working with. When I do get calls from people or a non-ideal client referral and they're a little bit different, you're kind of thinking, wow, that was probably my every week. But now it's occasionally you really notice it. They will haggle on price, and they'll be a bit combative or defensive. It's just really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And it reminds me of the 80-20 rule. So, yeah, 20% of the clients cause 80% of the problems. So if they're not your ideal client, but those ideal clients, they're the ones they don't cause problems, they bring you income, they're easy to work with, it's a good relationship, and they're the kinds of people you want to work with, and getting clear about who they are is so important.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, and the more you work with really like 100% ideal clients, the more they refer people who are ideal. So it's a bit of a flow-on effect, and I think that's the more you get clear on that and get those people in, the more you're able to create that time and freedom and those productized services or one-to-many groups, so such things like masterminds that really do free up your time, but allow you to give those gifts that you have to give your clients in a way that's not exhausting for you as well.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And I think your energy as well attracts clients too, doesn't it? And so I know a lot of your social media, you really let your personality shine through. Can you tell your strategy with that?
Yeah, so I just try and be me in social media. And I think for me as an online business, social media is one of the most important things. And I actually really enjoy doing that. I enjoy the business development and marketing side. And I just try and be real. There's sort of no point having a highlight reel. Having said that, if we have a really bad day, I don't necessarily go on social media and whinge, because I think it's important to have a positive, calm outlook. We all have bad days, but you don't really want to drag other people down with you. You have close friends to sort of chat to, but just having that really clear brand and mission, and for us it's about making life easier for people but ensuring their businesses are protected, and a real family focus, because we are now really a family business, and then most of the people we help have young children or children, and they also have those same values.
And I think what attracts people to you and what you do is you seem so much more approachable than what you think of as a traditional lawyer. The professional and the black suit and power dressing and all that kind of thing. And then here's you with your bright colors and your beautiful earrings and the comical drawings and things like that you have. And your messaging and the words, it's very much about you as a person and your vibrant personality, rather than like the formal and boring lawyer talk that.
Yeah, and you see websites, it sort of says more about, we've got 20 years experience and we do these documents and we do that and we've won these awards, but it's sort of like, hang on, but what do you do for the clients? It's not really client centered, or the outcomes you will get for those clients. And I think that is that really important flip for the message there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what stands you out from the crowd too. You're different because you're relatable to the client, because you're thinking about who the client is and what they're looking for from a lawyer, and it's someone that they can talk to and trust.
And for me, I'm my own ideal client, so I've found that side of things quite. Once I realized that, I'm like, oh, hang on, I need to talk to myself. So.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because that's a great way to really understand the challenges that your client will have, because they're the same kind of challenges you're facing.
And writing that back yourself chapter, I'm like, well, I'll talk about how I applied these steps to the remote expert, because actually they're the same 9 steps that clients will need to apply to their own business, because I think at the base of it, when we start a business, we all have the same challenges.
Definitely. Yeah. There's so many things that to think about and do when you're starting a business in those first 12 months. It's full on.
It is. It's down from, you know, and I talk to people about ABNs and GST and business structures and things, but then, and that often, because it's a little bit boring, it gets left behind for the more glamorous things or actually getting clients through the door. So it's really good to sort of have that mix. And I think I heard Vanessa say during your panel talk, just spending money on good advice is really important for legal, financial, accounting, marketing as well. I think that helps bring that cohesiveness together.
Yeah, absolutely. Investing money in those kind of things is so important, and getting that right from the start.
That's right.
So do we have any questions from the audience? If you would like to ask Emma a question or make a comment or say hello, please just turn your camera on and unmute.
Hi, Emma.
Hello.
Hi,
I have a very simple question for you. First of all, I've loved your talk. There's so much there, but you are constantly calm and you're calming. How do you do that?
I don't know. That's been one thing clients always say to me. And when I started practice, I was doing things like criminal law and family law, and people were still saying it to me. So I think it's my voice, a lot of it. And just being like, okay, there's no problem we can't solve. So a bit like Marie Forleo, everything is figure outable. You know, if there's a problem, there's nothing that, you know, jumping up and down or panicking is not going to fix it. It's just about, well, what can we do to fix that, and going through those steps. And that's really the way I approach business and life. And I think that's come with maturity, but I've always had that element, but I think that's really developed since I turned 40 in particular. Oh, have we frozen?
I'm still here, Emma.
Oh, that's good. Everyone else seems to be frozen on the screen.
They're coming back, I think.
Oh, good. They're coming back.
I can hear you.
I've been thinking, oh, I'm in the room by myself now.
There we go. I don't know what happened.
I think
I thought it was just
joining,
me.
so.
Sorry, I missed it all. That bit. Sorry.
Oh no.
Can you guys see me or hear me?
Yes.
It's Nicola. Can you see me?
Yes,
Yes.
Nicola, we can see.
Oh, I can't see myself. So I was a bit confused.
All good. Well, thank you so much, Emma. It's been wonderful hearing from you today and hearing all about freedom and how you're making your business work, and so many great tips and advice in there. How can people get in touch with you?
So if come over to my webpage, www.theremotexpert.com. I'll pop that here, or find me on Facebook or Instagram as The Remote Expert. And I'll pop that in the Facebook chat as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emma. Okay, well, it's now time for our next session. We're doing an author panel. We've got some of our authors here with us today. And I'll just make sure they're all here. Okay, beautiful. So we'll get started, and I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about who they are and tell us about their business. So Nicola, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. Hi to everybody else. My name's Nicola Lalive, and I own a global award-winning boutique beauty salon in Brisbane called In Therapy. And we love to make women feel and look amazing every single day and be the best versions of themselves. So I've owned that business going on 7 years now. I originally managed it, and we pride ourselves in being ethical, sustainable, and supporting our local community. So very proud of that. And we're a small group of girls, and we give a lot back to our community and get involved in a lot of local charities. So yeah, we are a traditional beauty therapy salon. So we offer a full range of services.
Thank you, Nicola. We have Louise here. Hi, Louise. How are you?
Good. Hi, everybody. And I've had a lovely morning listening to our fantastic speakers. You know, while I'm, Kath, would you please come here? I'd like to acknowledge somebody, girls. Come here, come here. While I've been here on my bottom listening to these amazing speakers, Kath is a lovely friend, but she's my cleaner. And she's cleaning my house while I'm sitting here watching all you guys.